Hey, good to see you back. Fair warning, these stories get under your skin. Real people, real situations, and no clean endings. Subscribe if that's your kind of thing, and let's get started. My IT admin installed remote viewing software on every computer in our office. I found his files on specific coworkers, and it's worse than you'd think. Here's one from r/let's not meet, 3 days old. Posted by Office Watch 22. It's the kind of story where ordinary work becomes horrifying, and the person telling it is still trying to process what they found. I work as a systems admin at a mid-sized corporate office, 8 years in IT. This is hard to talk about due to legal complications, but people need to know. 3 weeks ago, I was doing routine maintenance when I found software on our main workstation not in our asset management system. I ran diagnostics. It was installed on every workstation. Remote viewing software. The kind that shows what's on your screen in real time, invisible to users. I assumed it was a security measure I didn't know about, but I'd set up our protocols. I would know. I started tracing the installation. That's when I found the encrypted drive, hidden in a partition that shouldn't exist. Hours to crack it. When it opened, I saw folders. Dozens, each labeled with a name. Women's names. Some from our office, some I didn't recognize. Inside each folder were screenshots, timestamps, dates. I opened one at random. Photos of a woman at her desk during lunch. Dozens of photos. But the timestamps, taken at night, after hours, when she was alone. Each image documented exactly when she wasn't there anymore. That's when I stopped. I knew what this was. The implications crystallized immediately. This wasn't random voyeurism. It was systematic, organized, and deeply predatory. And it had been going on in plain sight. But this discovery was just the beginning. What came next? The scope of it, the time it took, the complete systemic failure of the people in charge. That was the real horror story. But that's when the real search began. I wasn't looking for much, just standard security checks. Then I found the encrypted drive, sitting there on a hidden partition, just waiting. So I took a breath and opened it. What came next made my stomach drop. I stopped thinking like a sysadmin and started thinking like an investigator. The encrypted folder wasn't just one person's sick collection, it was organized like a filing cabinet. 12 women's names in separate directories. In each one, screenshots dated and timestamped down to the minute. One folder had timestamps of when Sarah logged out at night, with handwritten notes like, leaves at 5:47, walks to parking lot alone. Another held Jamie's entire calendar extracted. Her home address was highlighted in yellow on a map file that he'd clearly studied. Michelle's folder had dozens of screens from her personal email at night, conversations with her therapist even, going back nearly 3 years. Some were printed out with his handwriting in the margins. Good angle here, repeat Tuesday, just interesting dress. I wasn't looking at a mistake or a moment of poor judgment. This was methodology. This was patient, systematic, deliberate observation. The scope was what got me most. When I counted unopened directories, 12 confirmed targets, I wasn't done searching yet. This wasn't surveillance, this was hunting. The scope, the organization, the patience, it all pointed to something darker than a simple mistake or momentary lapse. I knew I had to report this immediately, but I had no idea how deep it actually went, or how much the higher-ups might have already known about it. But the screenshots he kept weren't random. There was a system to it. I started going through the folders more carefully, and that's when I saw it. Most of the targets were women, 9 out of 12. And the screenshots weren't just random grabs, they were timed. A bunch from around noon to 1 p.m. on weekdays. Lunchtime, when people went out or stayed at their desks alone. There were dozens of shots of Sarah from accounting, sitting alone in the break room eating lunch. Different dates, same time, same angle. Then there were timestamps on the other files. Access logs showing the IT director coming into the building at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., sometimes multiple times a week. This went back almost 3 years. 3 years of after-hours building access, of monitoring, of taking screenshots of people, mostly women, when they were alone. One folder had actual written notes about their routines. One said, "Leaves early on Thursdays, alone in lot after 5." Another, "Works late Wednesdays, usually only person on floor after 8." This wasn't casual snooping. This was predatory. The comment section erupted. This is absolutely horrifying. The fact that he was specifically targeting women and had a system for it, that's not amateur snooping, that's organized predatory behavior. Did HR have any warning signs they missed? The fact that this went on for 3 years is what gets me. He was methodical about it. Organized. That's terrifying. Someone in IT replied directly. As someone in IT, this makes me sick. We're trusted with infrastructure access, and this is what some people do. Please tell me your company has reported this to law enforcement. Yes, law enforcement is involved. The moment I found the files, I photographed everything and went straight to our compliance officer, who called the police immediately. The IT director's desktop and laptop are both in evidence now. It's ongoing, but the detective told me they found far more material than just screenshots. He'd been exfiltrating email conversations and other data. By that point, the scope was undeniable. OP came back with an update post weeks later. He had videos. The police found hundreds of them. The police executed a warrant on Monday. I'm writing this from a coffee shop because I can't be in that office right now. When they searched his apartment, they found hundreds of videos spanning almost 3 years. Not just screenshots, actual recordings of women in the office. They were looking for this because one of the victims finally went to the police after our HR department sat on her report for 6 months. She'd complained directly about him targeting her, and HR did nothing. She called me this morning crying because the detective told her they found the surveillance equipment he used to monitor her entire digital life. Her emails, her messages, everything. She wasn't the only one. There were at least 4 women whose files went back the full 3 years. The police are still going through his computers. He's in custody. The company is already talking to lawyers. The comment section lit up with a mix of vindication and fury at the system that failed so spectacularly. The fact that she had already complained about him and nothing happened is infuriating. This is a massive liability for your company. Are you considering legal action against HR? OP absolutely should sue. This is negligent supervision and failure to investigate a complaint. The company knew there was a problem and did nothing. That's textbook liability. I'd contact an employment lawyer immediately if I were OP. I will never look at my IT department the same way again. Every computer in your office, every webcam, I'm paranoid now. What made people most angry wasn't just the surveillance itself. It was that the mechanism to stop it had failed. HR knew. They chose to do nothing. I reported everything to the police that same day, then walked into HR with the same encrypted drive. What came next moved fast. He had videos. The police found hundreds of them. I cooperated with the investigation and they seized all his equipment. What they found in his actual home drives was worse than what I'd uncovered. There were hundreds of video files going back 3 years. The director had systematic access to every workstation and had recorded entire days on at least 12 women. Timestamps, meticulous labeling, screenshots cross-referenced with his personal notes about their daily routines. He'd even been accessing building security footage to track when women stayed late. His arrest warrant mentioned predatory behavior, stalking, voyeurism, the list went on. HR called an emergency meeting and suspended him pending trial. They also finally admitted that one of the victims had reported suspicious activity 6 months prior, and they'd done nothing. Absolutely nothing. Just told her to change her password and move on. My family kept calling asking me to resign. I didn't sleep for 2 weeks. On day 15, I sent my resignation letter. I couldn't walk back into that office knowing what I knew, and knowing the systems I'd built could be weaponized like that. The comment section had one burning question. OP came back with an explanation. How did nobody detect this? Surely network monitoring would have flagged unusual outbound connections. This seems like a system-wide failure in corporate security. The man who approved all our security infrastructure was the one installing the back doors. He'd disabled alerts on his own accounts 2 years ago during an upgrade, and nobody reviewed it. Corporate security audits are a checkbox exercise. They check the box and move on. That's what I learned. And that's the one that settles in with me about this whole thing. Institution on top of institution, failing the same people. OP is out. They couldn't stay. And somewhere right now, that director is waiting for trial, and the women he recorded still don't fully know the scope of what happened to them. That kind of story doesn't sit right. On to the next one. Someone's posting my diary entries on 4chan a day before I write them. Most of us keep diaries to own our thoughts, keep something private in an increasingly public world, to feel like our lives belong to us, at least in writing. This story starts the moment that illusion shattered. I've kept a diary since I was 12, my way of processing each day, private, until 3 days ago. I found a 4chan thread with my diary entry, word for word, from Tuesday. My thoughts about my boss, my conversation with coworker Maya, even a stupid joke I'd written, all there, exactly as I'd written it. I thought it was a coincidence. Wednesday, I wrote about how paranoid that made me, about Maya at lunch, about sitting on my couch after work. Thursday morning, another thread appeared. Every word I'd written. Posted on 4chan at 2 a.m. before I even wrote it. I made a decision. If someone had access to my diary, I could control what came next. Write something different. Force myself off this pattern. Friday at work, Maya said, "Hey, I'm sorry about Tuesday, the thing with the client report." I stared at her confused. What? No, I wasn't upset about that. But the words came out. The exact same words I'd written in my diary Thursday night. The same apology, the same everything. She looked at me like I'd lost my mind. The words were pouring out and I couldn't stop them. She tried to convince herself it was impossible. Diary entries can't exist before they're written. The universe doesn't work that way. But here she was, helpless, watching her own words form unbidden, watching her hands move across the page with words she'd already read on 4chan. Words she couldn't control. Words she hadn't chosen to write. That Friday in the break room, she finally understood. This wasn't prediction. This was something far worse. So OP decides to test this. If something's really predicting her diary entries, she'll just write something completely different. Force her brain to go somewhere unexpected. It has to work. I started documenting everything. Thursday, I saw a post on 4chan at 3 a.m. Word for word, it matched what I'd written the night before. I made a plan. Friday, I'd write something completely different. I'd describe my morning walk in exact detail. Where I went, what I saw, everyone I passed. Friday, I was determined. I sat down and told myself, write about your morning walk. Only your morning walk. Nothing else. My fingers moved and I typed about an argument I had with my boss 3 years ago. A memory I hadn't thought about in months. Exact same words posted on 4chan Thursday night. I tried Saturday. I made myself write about my favorite book. My hands typed about a nightmare I had when I was 12. Sunday, I tried 5 times. 5 different prompts. 5 times my hands went rogue and pulled diary entries that already existed on 4chan exactly 24 hours earlier. It wasn't prediction anymore. Prediction is someone guessing what you'll do. This is something forcing you to do it. I'd look at my hands moving across the keyboard and not recognize them, like watching someone else type through my body. And here's the part that breaks her. She can't deviate, can't break the cycle. Whatever's controlling the entries isn't reading her future, it's directing her present, in real time, through her own hands. She's watching it happen, fully aware, completely helpless. And the most terrifying part is starting to become clear. This isn't random. This isn't chaotic. Someone or something is doing this on purpose. They're not just reading her thoughts, they're controlling them. Writing her life 24 hours in advance. Which means tomorrow's entry already exists somewhere on the internet. She's already written it, already lived it. She just doesn't know it yet. The next 24 hours become a nightmare of waiting, refreshing, searching, dreading what proof will show up on 4chan about what she's about to write. But she already knows. Whatever's posted, that's her reality now. That's what her hands will do. But by day 3, something shifted. The posts were no longer just ahead of her diary. They started revealing details she had never written down at all. I realized they were pulling memories, specific ones. A moment from when I was 9 years old, the exact shade of blue of my childhood kitchen, the way my father's voice cracked when he was angry at me. Things I had never written about anywhere. They appeared on 4chan before I could even fully process the memory myself. And then the posts started including things that hadn't happened yet. Upcoming conversations with exact dialogue I hadn't documented. Specific moments I hadn't lived through. 3 hours before I went to the coffee shop, there it was. The exact question the cashier would ask me, word for word. My mom would call and say something I had read on a 4chan post hours earlier. I tried to deviate. On day 5, I deliberately wrote something completely impossible in my diary, that I had won the lottery and was quitting my job. Nothing showed up on the board for that entry, but when I went back to writing my normal routine, it reappeared immediately, posted before I even finished writing it. That's when I understood. This wasn't surveillance through cameras or hacked files. This was something predicting actual events, controlling what I do. Every choice I think I'm making is already written somewhere else. I am not living my life. I am reading it as it unfolds, and I cannot change a single word of it. The comment section erupted with theories. This is one of the most disturbing things I've read here. The fact that you found yourself writing what was posted despite trying not to, that's the part that gets me. Not just privacy violation, but loss of control. Stop writing anything down, period. Not a diary, not notes, nothing. If you cut off the source, you cut off the connection. Whether it's surveillance, supernatural, or something else, stop feeding it information. Did you ever try writing something completely outlandish or impossible? Like, I'm going to the moon tomorrow, just to see if it would appear on 4chan. That might have proven if it's prediction or control. I did try that, actually. On day 5, I wrote something deliberately absurd, that I'd won the lottery and quit my job. Nothing showed up on the board for that entry. But the next day, when I wrote about my normal routine, it was posted again before I even finished writing it. It's like whatever's happening only works with things that will actually occur. That's when I realized this isn't just surveillance. It's predicting real events I'm actually going to experience. OP stopped writing. One decision in the morning changed everything. I found out who's been posting my diary entries, and I think I'm in serious danger. I stopped writing about a week ago. Just decided. No more diary. The 4chan post stopped within 48 hours. Nothing new. It's like whoever was doing this needed me to write it first. Without that act, the whole thing collapsed. But the victory feels hollow. I'm not free. I'm more trapped than ever. I don't know if I'm even capable of making my own choices anymore. Did I choose to stop? Or was that already written? Every decision paralyzes me. Did I have coffee this morning? Did I pick these clothes? I can't tell where I end and where I'm being controlled. I'm missing a piece of myself. And I still don't know who was doing this or why. I just know something was controlling me, and I'm not sure I've actually escaped. The comments that came through were brutal in their logic. The 24-hour gap is too precise. That's not a hacking timeline, that's intentional. Whoever's doing this wanted you to find the pattern and know you're being watched. The 24-hour gap is too precise. That's not a hacking timeline, that's intentional. Whoever's doing this wanted you to find the pattern and know you're being watched. Has anyone considered that OP might be experiencing something like involuntary precognition? Like she's actually writing the entries herself, but experiencing them as if they were written by someone else. Dissociative state? That's an interesting theory, but it doesn't explain how the entries are posted to an external 4chan thread before she writes them. If it were just a dissociative episode, she'd have to be posting to 4chan during blackouts. OP would have seen her own IP in the thread or been caught. The external verification is what makes this genuinely disturbing. What struck deepest was the question OP posed to herself in the silence. Was any of this even her choice anymore? So OP learned to live without recording her thoughts. Days passed. No more diary, no more 4chan posts. The nightmare had stopped, or so it seemed. But there's a particular kind of horror in silence, in the absence of proof that you were ever in control of yourself at all. I found out who's been posting my diary entries, and I think I'm in serious danger. I wasn't trying to find them. I was trying to move on. But 3 weeks into not writing anything, I got an email from an anonymous address. It had attachments, full chat logs from a Discord server I didn't even know existed. My name was in the channel, along with timestamps going back 8 months. 8 months. Before I even realized what was happening on 4chan. There were instructions, detailed, methodical instructions on synchronizing the subject. That's what they called me, the subject. They were talking about me like I was a project, like I was a test. The worst part? The handwriting in some of the notes. It looked like mine. I don't remember writing any of it. I don't know if I did, or if someone broke into my apartment while I was sleeping and planted evidence. I'm at a hotel now. I'm not going back. I don't know if the police will believe me. I don't know if they're part of this. I just know that I was never in control, not even for a second. The comments on this one cut deep. 4chan, B, and X have users who claim to post from future timelines. I've seen threads like this before. Most are LARP, but the fact that this one is so specific and matches real events is chilling. And here's what stays with you about a story like this. It strips away the comfortable fiction that you own your own mind. OP couldn't keep her private thoughts private, then couldn't keep her own hands from writing what others scripted. The paranoia crystallizes. Every decision you make after is poisoned by doubt. Did you choose that? Or was it always written? Privacy is about the fundamental belief that there's a self inside making choices. Take that away and you're left with the mechanism. Hands moving, mouth speaking, eyes seeing, but nobody home to claim it. On to the next one. I caught my Airbnb host entering my room at 3 a.m. claiming she needed to properly welcome me. After I watched the footage, I realized I was never alone. On r/Let's Not Meet, a user named Welcome Ritual detailed a week-long stay at an Airbnb that seemed promising at first, but quickly turned into something terrifying. This is what actually happened during those 7 days. I'd booked this place for 7 days back in April, needed a week in Portland for work, and the Airbnb reviews were solid. Tons of 5-star ratings saying the same thing. The owner was friendly and helpful, made you feel right at home. The host profile showed a woman in her 50s with a warm smile. I figured I'd lucked out. She met me at the door when I arrived. Super welcoming, like the reviews promised. Showed me around, told me about the Wi-Fi and thermostat. Kept saying, I want you to have the best stay possible, and I'm always here if you need anything. It felt genuine. I settled into the guest room and felt grateful I'd found this place, instead of booking some soulless hotel chain. First night was fine. Woke up at 3 in the morning to find her standing 3 feet from my bed, just standing there, watching me. She was smiling this soft, weird smile, and when she saw I was awake, she didn't startle or leave. Instead, she leaned in closer and whispered, I always make sure every guest is properly welcomed. It's part of my hospitality protocol. I need to personally ensure you're settling in okay. She was standing over my bed, at 3 in the morning, in my room, without knocking. And in that precise moment, standing there at 3 in the morning with her leaning in and whispering about protocols and procedures, everything changed. The comfort and safety OP had felt just hours before completely evaporated. But OP's unease wouldn't disappear. Over the next few days, it would get much worse. I sat up in bed, mind racing. She'd explained it so casually. Showing up in someone's room at 3 a.m. was just part of her welcome protocol. Every guest gets personally welcomed? That wasn't normal. But she'd said it with such certainty that I found myself wondering if I was overreacting. Maybe I was being uptight. By morning, I'd almost convinced myself to let it go. I had the room for the rest of the week. She'd been nice otherwise. I told myself it was just a boundary issue, not a threat. Set clearer expectations and move on. But then, she started appearing everywhere. I'd emerge from the bathroom and find her waiting in the hallway. She'd knock on my door in the afternoon with, just checking if you need anything. One evening around 9 p.m., lights off, I heard my door handle being tested from the outside. She didn't knock, she just tested it, like checking if I'd locked it. I locked it after that, but found myself lying there listening. Every small sound became a question. Every creak made my stomach tighten. She was always there, in the hallway, at the kitchen threshold when I came downstairs, appearing around corners. Never threatening, but never quite leaving me alone either. And that's what made it worse. This is where OP should have called it, should have left. Instead, she stayed, and the pattern only got darker. Over the next few nights, the pattern became impossible to ignore. On night 2, she knocked at 11 p.m., saying she needed to check the air conditioning. Night 3, around 2 a.m., another knock. This time, she'd heard a strange noise and wanted to make sure I was okay. Every excuse was thin. Every intrusion felt deliberate. By night 5, I'd logged 8 separate instances with dates and times. I texted my best friend and she told me to leave immediately. But some part of me wanted to understand what was happening first. Was I overreacting? Was this just an overly involved host? I decided to post about it on Reddit under a throwaway. I needed outside perspective because I was starting to doubt my own mind. The post blew up within minutes. Comments flooded in and they all said the same thing. This isn't normal hospitality. This is predatory behavior. People shared their own stories. Property owners who entered without permission. Guests who felt watched. Every comment validated what my gut was screaming at me. That night, sitting in the dark of that bedroom, I made a decision. I wasn't going to keep wondering and rationalizing. I was going to search this room thoroughly. Under the bed, behind the mirror, in the vents. Anywhere someone might have hidden something to keep an eye on me. I would have been out of that Airbnb before she closed the door on night 1. The fact that you stayed is genuinely brave, but honestly terrifying. What did she actually say when you confronted her about it? Did she even have a logical explanation? On the second night, when I really pushed back, she seemed genuinely confused. She said it was part of her hosting process, and that she checks on all guests to make sure they're comfortable and don't need anything. When I told her she couldn't enter without permission, she acted like I was overreacting. She actually said, "I just care about my guests," like that justified standing over me while I slept. It was the casual nature of it that terrified me most. The part about her just standing there watching you sleep for 20 minutes is the most disturbing thing I've read all week. That's textbook stalking. But what came next would confirm every fear. OP decided to search the room. What they found wasn't just creepy, it was evidence. I reviewed the footage. She came in 4 times in one night. The police are involved. I found it in the smoke detector above my bed, a tiny camera lens, barely visible. I downloaded the footage to my laptop. What I saw made me sick. She came in at 11:47 p.m. while I slept. She stood over my bed for 9 minutes just watching. Then, at 1:15 a.m., she came back. And again, and again. 4 times that night. 4 separate entries into my room while I was sleeping. I called the police the next morning. A detective reviewed the footage himself. His expression told me everything. He said the behavior pattern, the repeated, quiet entries, standing and staring without touching, fell under stalking and voyeurism. They arrested her 2 days later. Other guests started coming forward. One by one, they recognized themselves in OP's story. Has anyone else had creepy Airbnb host experiences? I'm honestly never booking a private room again after reading this. I had something similar in Seattle, where the host kept appearing with fake maintenance emergencies at weird hours. Eventually, I figured out she had access to her back-end camera feeds and was checking them right before showing up. These situations are way more common than people think. Most guests are just too scared to report it. This is predatory behavior masked as good hosting. The way she acted confused when you told her to stop? That's manipulation 101. I'm 100% certain you weren't her first guest. The way she kept coming back and acting like you were unreasonable? She's done this before. I'm 100% certain you weren't her first guest. The way she kept coming back and acting like you were unreasonable? She's done this before. You're right. The police found footage of 3 other guests from the past year. She's been doing this the whole time. All 3 felt uncomfortable but didn't report it. It took me finding the camera for anyone to take action. So OP went back to the security footage, frame by frame. A few days later, they came back with an update. I reviewed the footage. She came in 4 times in one night. The police are involved. I went back to the security footage from that first night and started watching frame by frame. I'm sitting here and my stomach's turning. She came in at 11:47 p.m., just 15 minutes after I'd fallen asleep. She stood over my bed for almost 5 minutes, just standing there. Then at 1:23 a.m. and 2:58 a.m., and again at 4:15 a.m. 4 separate times in one night. 4 times she let herself into my room while I was sleeping. I'm not exaggerating when I say this footage made it clear I was never safe in that room. I called the Portland Police non-emergency line that afternoon. They took it seriously. Detective Morrison came out the next day with a warrant to seize all the camera equipment and recordings. That's when things escalated fast. Airbnb's investigation discovered 3 other guests with nearly identical complaints going back 2 years. 3. People I'll never meet, but who lived through the exact same behavior. All 4 of us gave statements. The host was arrested on stalking charges, invasion of privacy, and sexual harassment. There's a permanent restraining order. Airbnb permanently removed the listing and banned her from ever hosting again. I'm writing this from my apartment in Seattle now. I got out of Portland the day the police took action. The comment section came alive. People who'd felt that same dread in their own Airbnbs, who recognized grooming language disguised as hospitality. Here's what stuck. Did you report this to Airbnb directly? They need to blacklist her immediately. This is criminal behavior. Please tell me this woman isn't still hosting. Other guests need to know what she's doing. And that's the inversion that haunted this story. The thing we're taught to trust, a welcoming host, a key, a sanctuary, weaponized by someone who understood how politeness masks predation. OP is safe. The host faces consequences. And on to the next one. Someone keeps putting items in my grocery bags I never bought, and I'm losing my mind. This is the kind of story that starts small and spirals into something genuinely unsettling. The kind of story where you have to wonder if you're the one losing your mind, or if someone else has already lost theirs. Hi everyone, I've been finding items in my grocery bags that I absolutely did not purchase. For the past 3 weeks it's been happening. I know what I bought. I keep a list on my phone. The first time it happened, I figured the cashier messed up. A bottle of specialty hot sauce I'd never buy. Not my brand, wrong heat level. I thought, okay, mistake. But then it happened again and again. Different items each time, all in my bags, and I have zero memory of putting them there or paying for them. At first, I genuinely wondered if I was having an episode. Was I blacking out in the grocery store? I mentioned it to my roommate 2 days ago, joking about how weird it was. How I found this specific cereal I used to love in high school that they discontinued years ago. I was joking. Wouldn't it be crazy if I found this again? Tonight I got home from the store. There it was. That exact cereal in my bag. The discontinued one. The one I mentioned to my roommate 2 days ago as a throwaway comment. That's when it clicked. This isn't a mistake. This isn't me losing my mind. Someone is doing this on purpose. And they know me. They know what I like. That realization hit her, the pieces snapping into place, the understanding that she's being watched, being known, being targeted. That's where everything changes. The items kept showing up, but by the end of that first week, it wasn't just randomness anymore. The pattern was becoming unmistakably clear, clearer and darker than any cashier mistake could be. Tuesday, I found the Moroccan oil shampoo I'd mentioned to my mom on the phone. The hard-to-find kind that no one in my area carries. Wednesday, it was the dark chocolate I'd tweeted about 2 days earlier, the Belgian stuff with sea salt that I'd said was my favorite. Thursday, someone had slipped in a jar of the discontinued moisturizer I'd been complaining about to my roommate, the one I'd only talked about with her in our apartment. I started keeping a detailed notebook. Friday, I got the loose-leaf oolong tea from that obscure Portland distributor, the place I'd searched everywhere for and mentioned to exactly one friend. How could someone randomly get that on a grocery trip? Saturday, someone added the out-of-print fantasy novel my best friend had mentioned to me on FaceTime, the one I'd been looking for. I remember staring at the bag. My hands were shaking. These weren't mistakes. These weren't lucky guesses about what a shopper might like. Someone had been listening. Someone had been paying attention to me. Someone knew me in a way that made my skin crawl. I checked the receipts again, looked at every date and time. Nothing. None of these items were ever rung up. It was like they were being placed directly in my cart by someone who knew exactly what would terrify me. That's when the fear shifted. Not confused panic anymore, but something cold and real. This wasn't coincidence. This was deliberate. And that's when OP truly understood what was happening. Someone was deliberately putting these items in her bags. Someone who knew her routines, her conversations, her deepest preferences. Someone was watching her, following her, and they were sending messages with every carefully chosen item. She realized with absolute horror that she was being tracked by someone who knew her life better than she wanted anyone to know it. The next few days were all about getting answers. I went back and checked every receipt from the past 3 weeks. None of these items were on them at all. I went to the manager and showed her photos. We pulled up the footage and watched someone deliberately placing items into my bag after I'd paid. Not like an accidental mix-up. They were following me through the store, waiting for moments when I wasn't looking, and physically putting things into my cart. The manager said the person's face was covered, but they saw enough to file a police report. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a cashier error. Someone was doing this on purpose. Someone who knew me well enough to pick things I liked. The comments section lit up with theories and concern. The cereal detail just gave me chills. He didn't buy a replacement cereal. He found your discontinued cereal specifically. That means he's been searching for things you've said you miss. That level of obsession is genuinely scary. This is actually a common stalking tactic called gifting. They leave items to let you know they're watching without directly confronting. The fact he was escalating to more personal items is a huge red flag. Did the cops say how long this had been happening? They couldn't pinpoint exactly when it started because I didn't report it until 3 weeks in, but they found his cell phone data showing he'd been at the same grocery store as me at least 47 times in the last 2 months. 47 times. And I still don't know what made him stop leaving notes or messages. Just items. The detective thinks he was working up to something worse. I hope you've changed where you shop, gotten new locks, and installed cameras at home. This person had a system. Systems don't stop just because someone got caught once. A few days later, OP came back. He's in custody, but I found something worse in my car yesterday. I called the police that day. The detective, Morrison, got the store to pull security footage. We watched it together in the precinct, and there he was, reaching into my cart. Actually into my cart while I was looking at other items. He was wearing a hoodie and positioning himself away from the cameras, but not entirely. I could see him place those items. When I asked if I recognized the car in the parking lot footage, my stomach dropped. My ex, Marcus. We broke up 2 years ago, and it was messy. Really messy. They found he'd been to the store multiple times. The building security footage shows he's driven past my apartment 4 times in the last month alone. He's in custody now, but apparently the stalking charges need more evidence depending on state laws. What terrifies me is that I had zero idea. For 3 weeks minimum, maybe longer. He remembered things I mentioned in passing 2 years ago and was acting on them. And then I found a USB drive under my car seat yesterday, just sitting there. I haven't opened it. I'm too scared to know what's on it. That's where the post left everyone hanging. He had physical access to your cart. That's not watching from a distance. He was there. I'm glad you reported this. How easy it would be unnoticed. Everyone's distracted. But the intentionality, he was planning, learning her patterns. The footage showed him barely visible, staying out of frame on purpose. That means he knows where the cameras are. Please tell me he's in custody and not just a person of interest. He's in custody. And yes, staying out of frame wasn't accidental. He knows exactly where the cameras are. The comments kept circling back to the same realization. This was orchestrated, not random, not a mistake. This was someone who knew exactly how to hide. When the police finally had what they needed, the arrest came within days. He's in custody, but I found something worse in my car yesterday. So he's been arrested and charged with stalking, harassment, and placement of unauthorized recording devices. The court issued a restraining order keeping him 500 feet from me and my workplace. I still can't say his name without my hands shaking. They found the notebook during a search of his apartment. Everything documented like he was building a case study on me. What I buy, my schedule, my car, the exact times I'm vulnerable. He'd been doing this for 6 weeks before I even noticed the first item. 6 weeks of invisible surveillance. And when they brought me back to the station to ask if I recognized the car in the footage, it was his. A car I'd seen parked near my apartment at least 4 times that I know of. The detective kept saying at least, like there might be more. I kept thinking about my pantry, about all the places I live in that he'd been. Then yesterday, I went to my car to grab something and found a small rectangular device wedged between the seat and the frame. A listening device. He was recording me. Every word, every moment I thought I was alone. The officer processing it said they'd found identical devices in his apartment aimed at his bed. This man had been documenting everything. The horror of it sits in a particular place, not in the violence he might have done, but in how thoroughly he believed he was loving you. Being known that completely, that meticulously, by someone who saw it as devotion instead of violation. That's what breaks something in you. The parking lot footage thing is what gets me. He didn't follow you home, he was intercepting you at the store. That's premeditated, organized stalking. How are you even functioning right now? This is one where the details never stop hitting. The systematic nature of it, the documentation, the ways he thought he was being thoughtful instead of criminal. And now OP is left sitting with the knowledge that he'd been inside her spaces, her car, her home, her grocery store, in ways he'd carefully hidden. That is the last story for today.